United Talk Time on podcast. It's the Sutton podcast.
And there it is! Sutton United of the GM Vauxhall Conference have put out First Division Coventry City, winners of the FA Cup themselves less than 2 years ago. And what a moment to enjoy for the fans of this Surrey side. They've had their moments before, but never one like this. But the whistle goes now. Delight for Sutton United. Sutton United from the National League are through to the last 16 of the FA Cup. No longer English football's perennial non-league club. A 123-year crescendo reaches a new peak for Sutton United, who are promoted to the Football League for the first time.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Sutton United Talk Time on podcast. It's the midweek social. Things are going very well. I've used the right opening sequence. I've used the correct graphics, so something is going to go wrong at some point. But before it does, I want to introduce very quickly to my guest, Robert. Hello, Robert. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. Thanks, Mike. How are you?
Oh, very well. Thank you. So you may be one of the people who didn't hear, but very few people. So I missed yesterday because isolation.
Yeah.
COVID did actually get me in the end, so I was a bit wiped out last couple of days, but I'm back now. So you're going to have to give me everything, how it felt, the whole thing from yesterday. How was it? Go on.
All right. So from my point of view, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's the same with everyone's. The first half, I believe, it was quite ropey. It wasn't really one-sided. It was more like 50-50 in a sense that there weren't any chances or big chances. Second half was more lively, especially from us. We had more shots on target, more shots at the keeper, and we worked him more, and then found out his weaknesses and strengths, and mainly his weaknesses. And then we obviously capitalised with the 80th minute winner from Craig Eastman. So yeah. And
yeah, well, a great goal, a great performance for him, and on one of his landmark. He loves the landmark. It was all being said yesterday. So yeah, that jumped ahead a little bit. Sorry, I'm too excited. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously, you're a couple of years younger than me. For anyone who can't see, he's a good few years younger than me. How comes you're supporting Sutton? How long have you been supporting Sutton?
So I've been supporting them for 4 years. Pretty sure this is the 5th year this season. It all started when my sister played for their women's team, and back then I was quite naive about the lower leagues. And then she said she could get me a season ticket. So I remember messaging all my mates. I was like, "Oh, I can get free season tickets for you guys," because she got like special royalty or something like that. And then they were like, "Oh, that's a sick idea. We should all do that." And then a couple of my mates all went down. We did that for a couple of seasons. And a few of them still go now. But yeah, that's pretty much how I got into Sutton United, through my sister playing for them.
That is brilliant. So you would have been coming in the season after the big FA Cup run?
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent.
And then I did some research and I was like, a year before. A year earlier, I should have been there.
Yeah. Don't worry, it will come again. I only waited 30 odd years for that big game to come again. Don't worry, you'll be fine. So you sort of jumped up onto my radar because I was, as I do, going through Twitter, and I saw your YouTube channel. So tell us a little bit about that. Is Robert 44?
Yeah.
And just search for that on YouTube. So what is it you do on there? Tell people who don't necessarily know.
So I believe it was the season Matt Gray came in charge of Sutton. I started that season vlogging the games, going to them, seeing the atmosphere, and pretty much just recording the games, home and away, occasional away ones, pretty much, because at that time I was still quite young, and I didn't really want to be travelling so far away, this, that, the other. But it all came about with me doing previews, reviews, and just enjoying making content, really. And it got quite a bit of support, which I was much appreciative of. And then lockdown came along, and that kind of sort of killed the momentum of the channel and the like motivation, because it was mainly based on match day vlogs, and obviously since we couldn't do that, it sort of made the channel a bit down, if you get what I mean. But I did a few live streams, live watch-alongs and stuff like that, and then I took about a year break, and I've only just come back now. And because I'm in college now, I'm trying to start getting interviews with like managers and stuff to build like a portfolio. So by the time next year, or no, the year after next, when I go to university, I can hopefully try and get into the media side of football. So,
Okay, that's excellent. It's fantastic ambition. So are you you don't have to be, so are you talking to SUFC TV as well? Are you getting involved with anything they're doing, or doing your own thing separately?
So I've been in contact with James. He's the guy that runs a large part of it. He's inviting me down for a few home games, which I still haven't managed to do yet, to have like a tour of the place. So I will need to do that, and it'll get like a bigger feel and a better understanding of how it all works.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you'll meet our guest in a minute, John, who is Carlisle journalist, supporter/journalist, and so he does a lot for Carlisle as well in print media. So you may be worth having a chat with him. So that's something else.
Yeah.
I obviously saw you because you got your interview with Matt, which is something I've not yet tried to do. How did you find that? How was he? So
I spoke to Matt in 2019. I used to do the vlogs, as I mentioned. It was Borough at home. That was a famous game. Obviously, we were 2-0 down, came back 2-2. But before that game, I remember getting an interview with him because I got approached by one of his relatives. I can't remember how close, but it was his relative. And he said that he could get me an interview before the game, a 5-10 minute chat. So I was like, yeah, that sounds great. I did that, and it went pretty well. We had a nice chat. And then I messaged him on Twitter like 2 weeks ago, and said that we could have a little chat, asked if we could have a chat about the season review, about last season and the famous title-winning season. And he basically said yeah. And fast forward to the interview part, I was quite nervous about that. I feel like I stuttered a few words and stuff. I wasn't as outgoing as I could have been because of like the figure he was. But overall, I think it was quite good. I think it did quite well.
It was very good, and is a lot better than I would have done. So don't worry. I do lots of ers and ums, and I'm not interviewing someone. I'll be sitting there going, "I love you," every couple of seconds. So yeah, anyone check out? Obviously on my socials, I did retweet it, but check out the Rob 44, and the interview is on there. And as I say, it was retweeted a couple of times on Twitter, so do look out for it. It was a really good interview. Back onto the game. Sorry, I did jump ahead. I was just too excited. A big crowd for a Tuesday night, and for the Pizza Cup. Are you a fan of the Pizza Cup, or are you one of the?
I didn't really. I took it as like a game's a game, a cup's a cup. I heard about people like doing this so-called boycott thing when it came about. As soon as we got like further into the group stages, I didn't really know why, but I can sort of understand from different perspectives. But for me, as a youngster, a game's a game. We're going so far in the cup. We had good draws against Portsmouth away, Palace at home. So it's just about enjoying the football, really, and we're doing quite well. So anything could happen this season with this cup. I'm just enjoying it.
Absolutely. I jumped on the bandwagon quite early. But I'm a glory hunter, and when I found out how much prize money was at stake, I was like, yeah, we're having some of that. Before the game, Matt threw a few surprises with quite a few changes. One piece of good news is Craig's red card was rescinded, which was a ridiculous card. But what did you think of the changes? I mean, I'd actually thought Enzio should have started on Saturday instead of Dave. And then he actually switched it around yesterday and put Enzio and Dave on the bench. Were you expecting those changes, or were you thrown a little bit?
I mean, I didn't actually go to the game on Saturday. I wasn't feeling too well. But going from sort of general knowledge, I think because we want to do so well in this cup, he's trying to just put stronger players, as strong like a lineup as he can. So I don't think it's much surprise that David was on the bench for this game, even though I just said stronger players. But with our squad depth, we got the likes of Enzio, we got Ricky Jr., Koboa, or like more people that can fill in the gaps of the more experienced, not more experienced, the more I don't know the word, the more starters.
The regulars,
the regulars. I'm not too surprised, to be honest, but he did put a few players on near the end to see the game out. But yeah,
he certainly mixed it up with the fresh legs. Normally it's the other side, the people who were coming on for the last 30, but then we had with Tance and Omar and Dave running up. That must have been terrifying. Then obviously, as we said, we got Easty on his very much landmark goal. A couple of hairy moments after that. We could have had 2-0. I know Andrew from on Twitter was quite upset that Dave's goal didn't go in. I felt if he'd taken another 2 steps, it might have just got the legs. But then if he'd taken the other 2 steps, the ref probably would have blown the whistle anyway. So, but that would have just put a nice seal on it. But into the semi-finals, who do you fancy? Do you ever?
I mean, I think ideally Hartlepool at home would be the perfect outcome. Obviously, we have beaten them before, and the last couple of times we faced them, we have beaten them. We know their standard. We know quite a lot about them, and a home tie against a team like Hartlepool would really be intimidating for them. But if we get an away tie to any of the sides, it'll be a good day out, a good outing. So, but yeah, I'm just excited to see who we get.
Well, I disagree ever so slightly because I feel that Hartlepool, they've got nothing left at the moment. They're not going to get into the playoffs. They're not going to get relegated. So they can put all their energy into this semi-final. Whereas both Wigan and Rotherham at the business end of League One. So they might be feeling, you know what's the priority? This cup or getting the league? That's what I'm hoping for. I think I'd like us and Hartlepool home against the League One opposition, and we both knock them out, and we both get to Wembley, and we stuff them at Wembley. That would be my ideal. But looking forward to... Oh, no, before I look forward, I have to remember, I'm going to ask you for who's your player of the day yesterday.
I'm going to go with Craig Eastman. Obviously, landmark, 300 appearances. He got his goal. He did what he does best, dominating the midfield. So it has to be Craig Eastman for that game.
Absolutely, yeah. Excellent. Thank you very much. So, yes, I covered everything in there. So we are going to just quickly move on to chat about the match on Saturday. And joining us now to do that is John, who is a journalist, supporter journalist. Which way around is it? Is it John? Sorry.
Well, I'm paid to be a journalist, not a supporter, but sometimes the line's a bit blurred. But they're not paying me to cheer and all that. So I'll say journalist first by a short head.
Lovely. So how long have you been covering Carlisle?
I've been covering them since 2005. So it's, 16 and a half years now. The first season I covered, Carlisle won the league and got to a cup final, and that gave me a complete delusion as to what the team was going to be like. It's not been quite as glorious since, but it's never a dull moment. This hasn't been a great season, frankly, but as a reporter, you just have to keep your eye on what's around the corner and what comes next. And they're in a slightly better position than they were maybe 6 weeks ago, which is a bit of a relief at the moment, although there's still a long way to go. Yeah,
no, I noticed the last few results, although when you look at the actual the form guide, it gives only like a 2-1-2, but the losses were against Forest Green and who was it again? Sorry.
Probably Mansfield, I think.
Mansfield, yeah.
Into sort of early December, they had a little unbeaten run in between.
And they're going great guns. So those two blemishes aren't exactly the worst in the world. What were the expectations of the season, and how are you going against those?
Well, I think they're certainly below expectations to be fifth bottom, and until quite recently, looking really fearful about what might come this season. Going into sort of November, December, the team's form and performance levels were really poor. It cost Chris Beach, the previous manager, his job. Obviously, there was the 4-0 thrashing at your place, which really flattered us, I have to say. Still remember the final whistle going when your man was playing through in added time.
He wasn't happy about that.
And it wouldn't have flattered it. It wouldn't have flattered Sutton at all. Anyway, that was where Carlisle were in sort of the autumn time. Thankfully, since then, the new manager, Keith Millen's come in late October and gradually started to turn things round a bit, made the team a bit more solid, cut down the goals against, got a way of playing that seems a bit more effective for the players that they have, brought 1 or 2 in as well, and they picked up 3 wins in relatively quick succession, although it was a bit of COVID interruption. But those few points in a 5-game unbeaten run has made all the difference in keeping them, the wolf from the door in that relegation battle, because all of a sudden that they're 8 points clear of the bottom 2, which nobody thought was possible in sort of October time. So, but yeah, pre-season expectations weren't, I don't think, for this sort of struggle. There was probably a bit of, measured scepticism around about how good the squad was, certainly lacking in 1 or 2 areas, but I don't think anyone really expected it to nosedive as much as it did. So it's been a bit of a rescue job ever since, and they are a more competitive side now. I mean, they got turned over at Forest Green on Saturday, which most teams do, and they're not the finished article, Carlisle, by a long way. But they've given people a little bit more hope that it's not going to be the ultimate disaster this year after all.
Well, I think you guys just got quite unlucky meeting us at that point, because I think we'd had a few games where we were just so close, and you could kind of, I don't know, Robert, if you remember back, you knew that we were going to do something to someone. At some stage, it was like, this is going to click, and yeah, it did click against you guys. But I'm glad you mentioned that, Tance. I've got that video somewhere of him going absolutely crazy when he was clean through, and he actually didn't score a home goal then for up until a couple of weeks ago, did he? So he would have been delighted to get that on his second debut, I think it was. Well,
we're quite glad that, 4-0, as I say, 4-0 flattered us. It was our heaviest league defeat for quite some time, actually. And yeah, we hit you at a bad point. You hit us at a great point, I think, because Carlisle were really at their worst on that day. And I think that was one of the days that really pushed the manager towards the brink. I think he didn't, more than a few weeks after that.
Yeah, teams don't react very well to losing to Sutton, I'll be honest. Who else? Was it someone else recently lost their job as well?
Just the manager.
Yeah. Teams don't like losing to little old Sutton. What did you know about Sutton before this season? Did you any knowledge of us at all?
Well, only a pretty basic working knowledge. In all honesty, the clubs have never really crossed paths before this season. Like everyone that's followed football for a number of years, I remember the Coventry City FA Cup tie. It's embedded in my memory as a young supporter on television, and that it never seemed to be off the telly for a long time. That was it. It was a really magical thing. And obviously the more recent sort of cup escapades that you've had as well. But other than that, really, just it was really eye-catching how well that you did last season to run away with that league, because as we've seen again this season, the competitiveness of the National League is ridiculous. Even more so when you've got Wrexham throwing 300 grand at players middle of the season. Somebody tweeted me before, said we really don't want to be going down into that league because you can vanish. So to come up as impressively as you did really caught the eye. There's a couple of ex-Carlisle players in amongst your ranks as well, which obviously we're aware of. But other than that, no, I wouldn't say I had anything more than that sort of knowledge. And it's, I wouldn't say I would have expected Sutton to come up and be in that automatic race, but you don't see many teams come up and go back down again. I'm not sure. It never happened. So that momentum, I always thought would take you into a competitive season. But you've probably exceeded expectations, I imagine, in your own place.
Yeah, no, this definitely. I mean, Robert, I don't know about you, but for the first time in a long, long time, when we got promoted this season, although we will keep banging on about 50 points, I certainly was like, do you know what? I think we're going to be okay, which is strange for me as a Sutton supporter, because normally it's like, right, let's tick off those 50 points. But I kind of always thought, because as you say, teams tend not to go down straight away. And the teams that came down to us in National League, Notts County springs to mind. Or we're going to absolutely destroy this league. We're going to be brilliant, and just really struggled. So, but one little thing I wanted to mention there is where you mentioned this 350,000 transfer. One of my friends is a Wimbledon supporter, and he's got genuine worries that this is going to cause them relegation, which would be lovely only because we could pass them, as we did do a few years ago when we went down and they went up. So we've never actually played them in a league game. So obviously, Wimbledon supporters, I love you. Well, what do we think on Saturday? What kind of game do you reckon it's going to be? Cagey?
Good question. I mean, Carlisle at home haven't been spectacular by any means, although they've not lost too many. They've drawn a lot. And I guess Sutton's away record doesn't match up with the home record. So very difficult. League Two is such an erratic sort of division. Carlisle the other week played Bradford City off the park, worthy 2-0 winners. Since then, they've kind of struggled for goals a little bit. So I think there's a little bit of pressure on them to sort of fill the void in front of goal. That's been the problem all season, to be honest, that they're the lowest scorers in the division, equal with, well, I think there will be the lowest scorers now because Scunthorpe, there were a couple the other night. That's been the bugbear all the way. So, yeah, hard to know. I mean, one thing that's probably, I hope I don't jinx them, is Carlisle aren't pushovers anymore in the way that they were when they came to Sutton, when they had a few other sort of really poor defeats earlier in the season. So they've got one or two new faces in this month. The manager's made them more solid defensively. I think after losing 3-0 at Forest Green, he might look to tighten them up a bit tactically, maybe stiffen up the midfield a little. So whether it'll be a free-flowing thing, I'm not too sure. You guys will tell me how Sutton have been playing on the road, but I don't know. I don't anticipate a goal fest. It might be a tight one because that's how it's tended to be at Carlisle by and large in the home games recently.
Lovely. Robert, what do you think?
As he said there, when they lost 3-0 to Forest Green, going in a bit more compact in our game, I think it'll be harder to break down your defence and your whole squad. But I do think with like the pace that we have, I think we could really hit you on the counter at points. But I don't want to go in full force and say, yeah, we'll win, because what might happen is we score a couple of goals and then concede late on and you might get a draw with us or even nick it last minute. So I'm just keeping my hopes up, keeping a bit humble, and hopefully we just get the job done.
I think it's going to depend hugely on how yourself, Carlisle, decide to go at it. Because I think, as Robert says, if we hit you we've got pace to hit you on the break, but if you don't give us the opportunity to do that, we're not going to do it. I think you guys are going to keep it as tight as possible. So I think it's going to be quite a cagey game. And I would say it's going to be either 1-0 either way or a lovely dull 0-0 draw, which we had against Northampton the other day. Obviously, my heart wants Sutton always, so I'm gonna predict a 1-0 to us. Probably knowing our lot, either an early goal and keep us on our toes the whole game, or a last-minute winner, but just to make us fully depressed and then go home full of joys. Either of you want to stick out with a prediction?
Well, I've just said it's not going to be a goal fest, so I'm going to go completely against that and say something like 3-2 or something to Carlisle. Just because it's got to happen eventually, hasn't it? We've had a lot of 0-0s and 1-0s and all that. So, yeah, 3-2 thriller.
Okay.
I'm going to go with 2-1 and a last-minute winner. A last-minute winner is what we've been used to a couple of weeks now. So I'm going to call it this time and say a last-minute winner. 2-1 to Sutton.
Because I'm a boring so I actually did an Excel chart on that to try and see how many goals we've scored and conceded in the last 5 minutes. And I think it was 11 games and 13 goals. And overall, we're 1 point better off than we were in the 85th minute that we ended up at the end of the match. So that's very exciting for everyone. Really.
Yeah.
I can share my working out if you want to go to sleep.
Yeah, well, we're all shadows when we look at these things. At the Carlisle side recently, and their ability of scoring late goals themselves has been reasonable. When they have scored lately, they got a last in 93rd minute equaliser against Crawley the other week. They scored late to sort of wrap up the win against Bradford. They got a very late win against Walsall to sort of start the little improved run. So they have been staying in games and going to the end. I mean, last weekend was a bridge too far for them at Forest Green, who were straight ahead by the end, unfortunately. But yeah, they've been quite durable. And if they can stay in that game, if they can, stay in it, leveled, through the hour mark or something, maybe. The signs are they can maybe nick something late on. So I don't know. We've got to cling on to all these things, haven't we? And,
absolutely. We're sitting here casually talking about winning and staying in the promotion race when we don't even believe we should even be here. There was one other quick thing I just saw before we came on, that if anyone is travelling up, it's all cashless on the bars and food in the away area. So make sure you bring your cards loaded up. No, don't sit there going to everyone, I've only got cash. Sorry, you'll have to sub me, because no one's going to believe you anymore. But yeah, I think we can wrap it up there, guys. Thank you very much for your time. It's very, very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone for listening. If anyone wants to join in the chat, please do so on many of the socials at Sutton Podcast. On all of them, as I say, probably avoid TikTok because I haven't actually logged into that for ages. I haven't done anything on there. But any of the others I'm usually on. And we will see you soon. I've got the next one is lined up for, I think, Sunday. So I will see you then. Thanks again. Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye. United!